Hey there, Bill Miles here, photographer, director, and creator of Visual Media Mastery. It's the place to be if you're an entrepreneur looking to level up your video, live casts, and photography for greater engagement and higher conversions. So today we have the last section of this little mini series on how to get the most out of your next personal brand library shoot. And we started out talking about how to show up better in front of the camera. And then we talked about how to think bigger in terms of what you can get out of the shoot. And now we're going to talk about how to find a photographer, how to find and vet a photographer that'll be a great match for you. This is always a hurdle. This is always a big question mark for entrepreneurs. They may know that they need to do a photo shoot, but it's a huge question of who am I going to use? How do I find a photographer? Maybe you've had an experience that wasn't so good in the past, or maybe you haven't really done a big photo shoot and you need to find somebody who you can trust to do it. It's actually not that easy, and that's why I wanted to give you some resources to help guide you. There are a lot of photographers out there, but you want to find the one that's right for you. Of course, the best way to start is word of mouth, right? Word of mouth referrals are king in our industry. So if you have somebody you trust in this business and they've had a good photo experience with a photographer, absolutely get a referral. And another thing you can do, even if it's not a friend, if you like the work that somebody, maybe it's another peer in the industry, that the visuals that they produce, feel free to reach out to them and just say, hey, you don't know me, but I love the visuals that you produce with your materials. Would you be willing to share who is your photographer? Most of the time, these people are flattered that their investment in their visual library has been noticed by somebody else, and they're usually eager to share resources. So that's a good way to do it. Of course, know that when you're talking to someone across the country, that photographer may also be across the country. It's not uncommon to fly a photographer that you want to your location to shoot, or you may travel to the photographer's location to shoot. That may seem like an extravagance, but it happens all the time. The importance for finding that right match can't be overstated, so don't think it's out of the box to actually travel one way or the other for a photo shoot. So most of you will be looking for a photographer in your local area. So how do you go about finding a photographer when you don't have word of mouth? You can contact the Chamber of Commerce, and many towns will also have a film community, at least if it's a town of a decent size. There'll be a film commission, and there'll be usually listings of photographers there. So that's a starting point. You can look at Instagram and search for photographers in your city and see if there are photographers that you like. There's actually another resource called the Workbook, that's workbook.com, and they have regional listings of photographers across the country, actually across the world, and there's some exceptional photographers in that directory. Know that they tend to work on more commercial assignments and their pricing may be higher for personal brand shoots. Not necessarily, but it's just a slightly different caliber of people. They're usually very experienced and skilled, so you're working with good people there. Another online resource is the NOTTH. Maybe you've heard of it. It's the NOTTH, THEKNOT.com. And it's a wedding resource, and they have wedding photographers primarily. It is a wedding site, but a lot of these photographers are also great portraiture photographers and personal brand photographers, right? So even though they're doing weddings and that's what's promoted on the NOTTH, they, of course, are probably very skilled at doing the work that you need for your personal brand as well. At least you can get an idea of their style and where they live. All right, so now what? You've looked at different resources online. Maybe it's been your business, local creative communities. Maybe it's been some of these resources like the NOTTH and so forth. And you've looked through their styles, and maybe you've identified a dozen, let's say, photographers that might suit your needs. So now you've got to cull that list down to a shorter list. How are you going to do that? The first order of business is to go online and look at the photographers' websites. Now, if they don't have a website, that in itself is a red flag, and I would just stay away. But any self-respecting photographer will have a website. Take a look at how they present themselves. Take a look at the imagery, but also how professionally they present the whole website. You'll learn a lot from that. From that point, I would narrow it down to 3 or 4 photographers whose style you really like. Take that list and give them a call or email them and say you'd like to have a creative call. You have this kind of project in mind and talk to them. When you actually talk to a photographer, you'll be amazed how much you learn about them, about their professionalism, about their demeanor, about their approach. Maybe they've had a lot of experience doing the kind of work you're talking about, the personal brand shoot. Maybe they have no experience. This will be a big, revealing exchange. When you have these calls, you may even want to do it on the computer or your phone via Skype or Zoom so that you can actually have a virtual conference, right? So you can actually see the person because you'll gain even more knowledge about them if it's a good fit and their personality through that. The next step is to request proposals from 3 photographers. When you request a quote from a photographer, you will learn, again, so much about how professional they are and how they approach an assignment. It will be very revealing. And yes, the numbers may vary quite a bit as well. You'll probably get a range from maybe not so expensive to quite expensive and maybe in between. But I don't want you to let the number have too big an influence at the front end of this. I want you to look at the estimate as a way to learn more about their professionalism and how good a match they are and how experienced they are with doing what you want them to do. One thing to look at their pricing is if you're comparing apples to apples. One photographer may include hair and makeup, may include meals, may include all kinds of services, where another one doesn't include them at all. In fact, the other one may not have even thought about them, which is a red flag in itself. So I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way. It's just look at them and learn and compare and see who feels the most competent and appropriate for you. Another item to look for is retouching. Does a photographer include retouched final files for you or not? Some will, some won't, some will charge additional, but it's a good thing to be aware of. As a sidebar to this estimate conversation, we need to talk about usage rights, because usage rights will be a topic that comes up within the estimating process. You should know that in this country and some other countries, the creator of the artwork is also the owner of the copyright of that artwork. What does that mean? You hire a photographer to take photographs of you. That photographer owns the copyright of those images. What you are paying for is the right to use those images for whatever your needs are. You can transfer that copyright by contract. It's called work for hire. And that photographer can give you the copyright, and that's no problem. And some photographers will be happy to do that, and some won't. But what you really are interested in is not so much the copyright. You want an unlimited license to use those images in perpetuity. That's what you are seeking. So that should be your negotiation with the photographer. It's very important to get this clear on the front end so it doesn't come up and bite you in the butt in the back end, because it can and it will if you don't pay attention to it. I'm just going to repeat that again. The rights that you want are unlimited rights in perpetuity from the photographer. If you feel more comfortable actually getting the copyright, you can negotiate that with the photographer as well. All right, the last step is to ask for referrals. Once you've decided on, say, 2 photographers or 1 or 2 or 3, you've gone through the process of looking at their work, you've estimated with them, get referrals from them, absolutely. And call up 1 or 2 referrals, people who've worked with these photographers, and get their experience with them. If everything is a green light, you should feel very comfortable about who you're working with. So the last tenet in finding a photographer, now that you've chosen one, is to embrace the idea of collaboration and trust. You've selected a photographer, you've made the good effort to find the person that's a good match for you. You've talked about what you want out of the shoot, you've conveyed mood boards and shot lists and so forth. When it comes time to your shoot, trust the experience, trust the photographer, trust them to do what they're doing, trust he or she in the process. That doesn't mean that you completely turn off and you're not aware. You want to make sure that you're still getting what you need, and make sure that you look at some photographs along the way, some of the images in process, so that you are aligned and that you feel good about it. But it is a collaboration. At this point, this person is your peer and you're collaborating together towards the goal. And the goal is a fabulous library of images, right? So trust the photographer at that point. collaborate, and have fun on the shoot. That's the most important thing. You've taken all the steps to alleviate the worry. Now just enjoy it. Okay, to just wrap up this little mini-series, we've talked about so many things, so many ways to get the most out of your brand shoot. I want you to think about this in terms of value versus cost. I've told you it's an important investment. The value you get out of it is more important than the cost, because if you plan it right, the value will eclipse the cost many times over. You'll get value for months, for years, across many different platforms. If you don't plan it right, you may be stuck with a few images, and then it becomes an expensive investment. But if you plan it right and you think about value, the cost will take care of itself. Okay, I hope this has been helpful for you. I look forward to your big success with your next personal brand shoot. You can engineer the success and almost guarantee the success if you follow these steps. See you next time.